Good morning. I'm Jeff Swerk. I'm the SVP of Marketing for Group Black, and I want to welcome you all to the NIL Creator Stage at Advertising Week New York. We hope you're having an excellent day because we at Group Black are having an excellent day. We're proud to announce that Excellence, the premier collection of diverse voices, is streaming now on Peacock. So if you have the Peacock app, please open that. Not here because the Wi-Fi isn't good, but please tune in because we are live today. And without further ado, I would love to introduce Lance.
Congratulations. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. I'm Lance Pillersdorf. I am one of the co-founders of Advertising Week, and welcome to our 20th anniversary. A lot has changed in technology and advertising and marketing over the last 20 years, and I think nothing has changed more than the sports landscape, and in particular the college sports landscape. So we have a great day full of amazing programming. We have great athlete creators, we have rappers, we have entrepreneurs, we have wine entrepreneurs, and a really packed day. So a big thank you to our friends at Group Black, Jeff, Lizzie, Peter, Anna, Bonin, Phil, who else is in here from the Group Black team, I'm sure, Cavell. So a big thank you to them, a big thank you to Greenwood for putting this day together, and this was a great collaboration between Advertising Week, Greenwood, and Group Black. So without further ado, Andrew Mavis, the co-founder and CEO of 98 Strong. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for the introduction, Lance. We're very excited to be here and kick off an exciting day at NIL Plus. As Lance mentioned, I'm Andrew Mavis. I'm the CEO and co-founder of 98 Strong. We're an NIL platform that connects student athletes with brands with a main focus on really delivering premium brand campaigns via our network of student athletes that spans 1,000 universities in all 24 sports, our white glove service, and our technology platform. And I'm joined by an amazing group of panelists to touch on all things NIL here today. So I'll kick it off over to them to introduce themselves, and then we will go from there. Sasha?
Hi, everyone. I'm Sasha, Alexandra Ozeretz. I'm a tennis athlete at Cal Poly University in San Luis Obispo. It's a small town on the central coast of California. I started playing tennis when I was around 9 years old, and I always knew I wanted to be a D1 athlete, and I think I've just been working relentlessly to get to where I am, and I'm just excited for any steps that's going to come with it.
Hi, I'm Courtney Scott. I'm the VP and Head of Brand and Marketing at Gainful. We are a performance nutrition company that focuses on clean, customizable supplements. I spent most of my career before this, though, amongst many of you at agencies like Huge and Gray and Havas running brand strategy teams. And we've been working, Gainful's been working closely with 98 Strong for the last 6 months or so on a few student athlete campaigns, which has been really exciting, and I'm thrilled to be here to talk about it today.
Good morning, my name is Darren Heitner. I'm the founder of Heitner Legal. I've been practicing for roughly 15 years in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. That's where I'm based. And I primarily practice in regards to intellectual property, entertainment, and sports, working with athletes, agents, brands, and NIL collectives, which are groups of boosters that have been funneling money to athletes at the high school and collegiate level. Thank you for having me here.
Awesome. Well, to kick things off, I think no better person to start with than Darren. Darren has been involved with NIL since the beginning. He's our lawyer. He's pretty much known as the expert in the space. So you've seen pretty much everything from the jump, but would love for you to share sort of how you've seen NIL evolve since July 1st, 2021 to today. And also, there's a lot of negativity around NIL, so to touch on some positives that have come with it.
I'll try to be as brief as possible. You actually have to go back to 2019 when states, starting with California, and then my own state of Florida, decided that it was not fair that college athletes in particular could not benefit from their name, image, and likeness, or otherwise known as publicity rights. The NCAA had restricted college athletes forever from exploiting those rights, and in fact, it was only the state of California that allowed high schoolers to take advantage of their names, images, and likenesses. So fast forward to July 1, 2021, after a lot of states following California and Florida passed bills, signed them into law to supersede the NCAA's restrictions, the NCAA decided we're now going to allow college athletes to exploit their commercial fame. Now, that opened the door to all sorts of transactions. I referenced NIL collectors before and booster payments, but I call that fake NIL. The real NIL is really emanating from brands who see value and a return on investment by associating themselves and partnering with athletes. And what was interesting about July 1, 2021, it opened the door for all college athletes to benefit from NIL. But as we sit here today, not all high school athletes throughout the country can do so, and that's important for brands to know. Roughly 40 states allow it, but a state like Texas, as large as it is, does not allow a high school athlete to enter into a relationship, a contractual or business relationship with a brand. So there's still a lot of work to do to change the landscape, and it's very important for brands to be cognizant as to the differentiation state by state, even at the collegiate level, as to what they can and can't do. But what we've seen truly throughout the time in the past 3+ years are so many brands probably hesitant at first, but then really decide they're going to embrace this concept of working with college athletes and high school athletes. And at first, a lot of the attention from the media was just simply on the fact that the deals were being brokered. But what we've seen since then is that there's less attention on that and more attention on the real value that's being created when the brands attach themselves to athletes, male and female, revenue and non-revenue athletes who truly connect with the brands and the goods and or services that they're providing. And I think that there's just immense opportunities. And from the brands that we've worked with, they do really see a lot of return on their investment.
I think that segues, well, thank you so much, Darren. I think that segues great to Courtney. We'd love for you to share more around why Gainful chose to lean into NIL and the specific value that they see from working with student athletes. As Darren touched on, it opened up for brand partnerships, but it also opened up this amazing gateway into Gen Z. So we'd love for you to touch on that.
Yeah, there's really two reasons that it was a really obvious choice for us. One was, like you said, the connection to Gen Z. We have historically been a brand, we're a D2C brand, had been a D2C brand for many years that was focused on a slightly older audience, but we are very focused on retail expansion right now, and we went into all Target stores last year, are launching in Vitamin Shoppe soon, and are starting to show up in places where younger people shop at a lower price point that's a little bit more accessible. So it was really the time for us to start to think about outside of the box ways to connect with that audience. So opinion leaders in the college community, are the best people to go to. Secondarily, influencer marketing is obviously a huge part of, I would assume, pretty much any brand strategy right now. But influence has become so commoditized and quite transactional. And while we will continue to do more traditional influencer marketing, one of the things that I'm very focused on at Gainful is finding communities of people who have influence within their community but aren't necessarily traditional influencers. Those key opinion leaders, and they can be micro key opinion leaders who lead the opinions of their team, their community, their network within their university, are exactly the type of people that we want to build really authentic and deep relationships with. And that's a big part of our, quote unquote, influencer strategy as we think about how we grow going forward.
That's amazing. And we've obviously loved working with you all. To that point, Sasha, could you touch on a little bit more about your NIL experience and what it's meant for you to work with brands like Vury? And then even more recently, so Sasha is a part of our Elite 98 program. So she's actually on billboards all across the country for 98 Strong. She's in a commercial running across live sports. So she might be humble about it, but she's had an awesome NIL experience. But would love for you to share, as a tennis athlete who might not get those opportunities, what that's meant for you and how that's been.
Thanks. Yeah, honestly, working with 98 Strong has been a dream, especially as an athlete that plays tennis. I think now more, especially tennis, is a lot of people are paying more attention to tennis, but with NIL coming around, it's giving the opportunity to work with smaller sports, I would say, or just less watched sports compared to football or something that has a lot more streaming. Working with 98 Strong, especially on the Elite 98 campaign, has been super fun because I've been able to just meet so many amazing athletes that genuinely love working and just expanding their brand and working with brands that they actually value. And being part of that campaign was amazing because you get to just have everyone see all the hard work you've been putting in your entire life. And something that makes me feel so amazing is that you can see all your hard work just paid off, I guess, yeah.
That's amazing. And so with that, sort of segueing into what's really important in NIL and protecting student athletes. So a lot of the times, there's murky waters around that, and we've been really grateful to have Darren with leading all of our contracts because we're doing this at scale with thousands of student athletes, sometimes a month, that are doing these transactions. But could you touch on some of the key points to protecting student athletes?
Well, I think it goes hand in hand. A lot of the protections for the athletes could also be protections for the brand. But probably the most paramount item would be quality control, right? If you're the brand, you want to, one, from a substantive standpoint, have control over, or some level of control over the message. You don't want to be abusive in a sense and basically tell the athlete what to say. And in fact, there's typically a rep and warranty in the contract that the athlete actually enjoys the product or service that's being promoted. But you do want to have some level of control as to what the message ends up being, because you want to have some semblance of an idea as to what that return on investment will be, even though you really can't control the entire process. But it's not only from the substantive standpoint, it's also from the regulatory standpoint, because the FTC is watching this space, and you want to make sure that there are the important disclosures that are included in any sort of social media promotion. Oftentimes, you may not read about all the actions and communications that come from the FTC, but we're handling a lot of that behind the scenes to try to avoid it from blowing up into a full-fledged dispute. So it's really important from that perspective. Then also talk about from an intellectual property perspective. You can try to shift as a brand all of the responsibility to the athlete to try to clear all rights and make sure that no other brands are being used or any sort of images that may be registered as a copyright for somebody else. But ultimately, as a brand, you have deep pockets, and if there is an infringement, they're going to be coming after you. So you want to have some level of control. The next thing, and I'll try to be as brief as possible, I'd say payment terms. And this oftentimes becomes a really big part of the discussion and the negotiation. The agents are oftentimes involved in figuring out exactly how much is to be paid, but then it becomes a conversation as to when is the money going to be paid. If you're on the athlete side, obviously you want as much money upfront as possible, and if you're on the brand side, you'd like to kind of spread it out, particularly with the last payment being once all of the deliverables are completed. What I've seen in a lot of contracts that are presented by the brands, at least initially, is that the brands can terminate at any point in time, not only with cause, but without cause or for no reason whatsoever, and not have to pay the athletes anything whatsoever. And so if I'm on the athlete side, I'm always looking at that first and saying, this is non-negotiable. And even if I'm on the brand side, I say, why are we wasting our time on something like this? Because this is something that the athlete, if the athlete has an agent or a lawyer, is going to redline immediately. And then briefly, the last thing that I'll touch on is grant of rights. And this is typically a more complex, convoluted section of an agreement. But things like, are the rights that are being granted perpetual? Are they irrevocable? What rights are you actually getting from the athlete? And for instance, there's always a term as to how long the athlete and the brand are in a relationship. Well, once that end of the term comes, can the brand still use any of the content? Does it have to be taken down immediately? Can there still be some promotion for 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, or longer afterwards? So these are really important terms that you dive into, and I'm just touching the surface on 3 items. There are so many different elements of a business relationship or a contract that really need to be looked into on the athlete side and on the brand side.
Yeah, and we've been, like I said, incredibly thankful to have Darren, because obviously, having founded the business as a former water polo student athlete, for us, everything is about keeping the athlete first and keeping them safe and protected. And where things get murky, that's where Darren can come into play to make sure that everybody's protected. With that being said, Courtney, when you're working with us or partnerships in general, what do you typically look for in a creator when it could be a more long-term relationship that could drive even more growth for the business?
Yeah, I mean, I'll start by saying that one of the things, I would say a lesson that we learned in our first, stint of working together is just to not necessarily treat these students like a typical influencer in a positive way. Like I mentioned before, the transactional nature of influencer marketing today, and how I think I'm trying to do everything I can to get us out of that right now. So I think in our first campaign, we probably made the mistake of briefing them the same way we would like a traditional lifestyle micro-influencer or something. And what we've learned is giving them more freedom to really create their own authentic connection with the brand and talk about it in their own words, definitely benefits you. In terms of building long-term relationships, like the love has to be mutual. Like the athlete has to love the brand. So to us, the first thing that we always do, one, is just like send everybody product right away. Like give them an unlimited budget to try as much as they want and make sure that they just like the product. I actually don't want you talking about my brand if you don't like it, and that's okay. We're not for everyone. Like we want it to feel really authentic. And the second thing that we do that I think is unique and special is that we actually turn every single student athlete into an affiliate. So we actually give them their own code to be able to drive their own affiliate sales and earn commission. And they can earn that commission in perpetuity, honestly, even after we stop working together if they'd like. It's something that that I think kind of sets us apart and also puts the control in the hands of the athlete and allows them to kind of decide like how invested they want to be and how much they want to make from the relationship. Like, look, try it, talk about us, share your authentic experience with the product. If this is something that really resonates with you, this is an opportunity for you to earn additional income and also to really become a part of the brand. And as we see, whether it be student athletes or other micro-influencers really diving into our commission and affiliate program, those are the people too that we tend to say, hey, wow, it really looks like not only do you authentically love our brand, your message is resonating with your community, and your community loves our brand as well. There's obviously something special going on here, and those are the people then that we go back to and say, hey, let's build out something a little bit more meaningful, work together in a larger way, and continue this relationship for years.
Yeah, totally. That's awesome. And I loved how we incorporated the affiliate links. I know the focus was Target, but then we were able to tie the links in.
Yeah.
And at first, like any campaign, the first month or two, you might not see any sales at all. But the fact that we actually had some online traction is a great sign with the alignment with the brand and the student athletes. So to that point, based on how brands are selecting, how brands should protect themselves, athletes should protect themselves, within this world of NIL, how have you focused on, Sasha, making yourself more marketable and even more approachable for different brands?
I'm actually going to touch on something that Courtney said. I think it's really important to be your authentic self because since our day-to-day lives are just so busy and packed, when working with brands, you want to work with brands that you genuinely enjoy, something you use on the regular. And when you're working with those companies, you can automatically just influence everyone around you, your teammates, just people on campus, other athletes. And when you're working with something that you're actually passionate about, it doesn't feel like you're taking up time. It's a responsibility to promote this brand that you're not actually enjoying. So on campus, I would say student athletes are definitely leaders. And so when we're going advertising on our social medias or just talking about it in groups of people, people see what we enjoy and they want to give it a try. So I think it's really important to genuinely just be yourself and be super authentic and work with brands that you're going to want to keep working with in the future. So
that's awesome to hear you say about the word of mouth aspect. Makes me think of another question. So a lot of times when we're starting off partnerships, we're looking for the tangibles or on return on investment. And a lot of times people neglect the word of mouth element on campus. So talk to me about how your teammates and friends have reacted to you as a tennis athlete actually being able to do NIL partnerships. What that's meant for all of them to see how they can actually do something with it.
I think it's really important now that you're saying, because especially in the tennis aspect, growing up, especially in the juniors, after NIL became, I guess, legal, everyone has been wanting to be incorporated in this so that they can show off their personality and brand and their success, I guess. And so the word of mouth aspect comes into not only your current university or the people you've met after you've become a collegiate athlete. It's everyone that you've grown up with, that you've trained with since you were little. They see that their hard work can also pay off. And I think it's really important, especially for a company like 98 Strong, because it makes it a lot easier for us athletes who have a very busy schedule to find these partnerships and connections with these brands, and spreading it to other athletes. It just makes it so much more influential, especially, for example, working with a company like Viore. That is something that I use on an everyday basis. I wear it to the gym, I wear it to our workouts, even though we have our sponsored school company for our team. It's just like a day-to-day outfit that you wear, for example, and so when they go and they send you clothes for you and your team, for example, it's so easy to talk about it and influence it and be like, hey, I have this code if you want to use it, and obviously everyone wants some money off. So, it works because you get to talk about this brand and that you genuinely really love, and it just spreads through everyone you know, through your community.
That's awesome. I think to that point, in terms of spreading the love and all the different brand partnerships, Darren, you've obviously every single angle of brand partnerships from all different sides. Would love to know a little bit more about some of the ones that you've seen that have been most impactful, from a transaction side to all the different deals you've been involved in.
I was listening to Courtney and
Yeah.
Sasha, and one thing that bleeds through all of these comments is authenticity. But I'm thinking to myself also incentivizing the athlete beyond just a promo code or a guaranteed amount of money or some form of royalty. And what we're actually seeing more and more, and in particular from startup companies that are really looking to grow very quickly, is an equity offering. And oftentimes, it's not that the athlete is just strictly being provided equity, because that's a big risk that the athlete is also taking, that it may end up being nothing, but that it's a component of the deal. And oftentimes what we see is that the athlete goes above and beyond what the pure required deliverables are in the contract. And they really feel invested themselves, they technically are, in the well-being of the company and its success. And it does become more complex than negotiating a contract that is just surrounding a guaranteed payment and or a royalty. But I've seen it really bleed through, and you have these athletes who are becoming true ambassadors. And it doesn't feel as transactional as it sometimes is when it's just, you're getting paid X either at the start, middle, or end of the term. So I think that's something that brands may want to look into more, to the extent that it is feasible.
Yeah, that's great. I've seen a lot of those partnerships. Darren has a great newsletter where he'll highlight these different elements of stuff, so you can always sort of stay abreast on those topics. And with that said, so Courtney, we were talking off stage about building sort of more long-term relationships with our athletes, and you touched on sort of what you're looking for in those different partnerships. My question to you would be, so like, how would you want to go deeper, and where would you want to see the most value in return for your business? Is that sales online? Is that professional content creation? What's sort of the return you're looking for when you're working long-term with the athletes?
All of the above. Okay. It really depends on the campaign and the initiative. Like, that's what's so interesting. At least the way that I think about influencer marketing and working with, key opinion leaders and athletes and stuff is that it runs the full funnel, if there is a funnel anymore, of marketing. The work that we've done together so far, I would say, was just like treading water around, or testing the waters around building out awareness within these micro communities on campus. I see lots of potential with student athletes. And one of the reasons that we were particularly interested in working with 98 Strong is that I'm much more interested in building out relationships with athletes that sit outside of that more kind of like traditional brand partnership sport. So not necessarily going after the football players and the wrestlers with our protein powder. Like, we're much more interested in working with people in alternative sports. At least that's the way people think about them traditionally. So like tennis and, I don't know if this is a college sport, but rock climbing and padel and things like that, where people are trying to live and be well. I feel like I've lost the script on what the question was. Can you repeat it again?
It was really it was great. It was really more so like what you're looking for from a return on investment perspective.
Yes, thank you.
Term into a
I got excited because I could talk about that forever.
Feel free.
No, but what we're looking for there is, that's right, there's a few different opportunities. And one of the reasons I was excited about these sports that sit outside of the traditional ones is that you hear the football player's story told a lot. You might hear the track star, their story told. I think it's a lot of these smaller sports, when we were talking to people who are in like the fencing team and things like that, like these are not stories that you hear told all the time. So from that perspective, I am interested in handpicking a few of the athletes that we saw who produced really high quality content and have interesting stories to tell and seem to have a real authentic love for our brand, and using that for just telling interesting stories around athletics and health and how people thrive. And then the other thing is that from a brand awareness perspective and storytelling, you mentioned this at the very beginning, but I think athletes authentically have this inner drive to perform better each day and to continue to grow and progress. As they move forward. And those are stories that I think are worth telling. And so I think content is one of them. I do think, transactional sales is a part of it. It's not necessarily like, I'm not necessarily looking at CAC on, the way that we're working with with student athletes. I'm much more interested in building out authentic influence, capturing meaningful stories that resonate with people, building brand awareness within university communities. And I do think that lower funnel marketing could come down the road, but right now it's much more about building community engagement and awareness.
That's amazing. And you touched on a lot of the reasons why we started the business with the focus on the 98%, all those student athletes, aka the tennis players, the water polo, the track and field, whose stories often go untold but have this amazing stories to be said and shared when done the right way.
Well, if I may, it also helps. This whole concept of NIL at the college level creates new opportunities for brands that they didn't have before. Going back to what Sasha said, which is like a deal with an apparel brand, right? And that you can't wear it all the time because the school has its own deals with certain brands. And so, for instance, you can't wear certain apparel during the games or at practices or on their facilities. But now brands that wanted to maybe associate with those schools have an opportunity to, I guess, ambush and create affiliations and associations with the actual athletes who are performing and making those schools successful. So it really has created so much more deal flow and opportunities for the athletes, but also for the brands.
That's awesome. With that, we have a couple minutes left. I know we discussed doing a little bit of Q&A. So if folks have it, they can scan and ask questions. I do see one question on the screen down there, and it says, you said you might see sales in the first month with athlete affiliates. Is that common? And I think I can address that question off the bat. It depends on the approach of the partnership. With Gainful, for example, it wasn't the main thing we were looking for in the first couple of months. It was sort of like a natural integration as we were focused on target. But if a brand comes to 98 Strong, as we always work backwards with the growth marketers' like thought process in mind. If they say, hey, I have to hit a 1-to-1 ROAS within the first couple of months of our partnerships, we'll tailor fit a campaign that can hit that goal and make sure that we're set up for success. And that's really how I'd answer that question. I guess, Courtney, do anything to add on that one?
Yeah, I mean, outside of that specific example, because you're right, we were working with Target at first.
Yeah.
I have seen it from student athletes. I think student athletes, there's parity between them and just a typical influencer in that it just depends on the person. Like usually if we're doing an influencer campaign with 100 people, 70 of them will drive very little revenue, honestly, but 30 of them will be stars, and of those 35 of them will drive 90% of the sales from the campaign because you can you feel it right away.
Yep.
If someone really authentically loves a brand and talks about it in an authentic way and it resonates with their community, the affiliate sales come. So I definitely think it's possible. It wasn't, like he said, it wasn't a primary focus for us, but I think that if it was, you absolutely could see sales come through immediately.
Yeah, we've definitely seen it work at scale like that when we can have 100 student athletes that are tailor-picked based on their audience authenticity breakdown to drive more, conversion-based stuff. Well, I don't see any other questions popping up, but with that, I think in our minute left, we can go really quick. What are you most excited about in NIL for the future?
For me, honestly, I'm just excited about the growth of NIL as a whole. Just partner with like larger companies and just as you touched on, like equity, like something that you want to see working with in the future past your time as an athlete, something that you can just use to build your brand for the future after being a collegiate athlete. So I'm just excited to see all that grow. And yeah.
I think it just opens us up to a whole new pool of authentic, hardworking, impressive people that we can partner with and do really incredible marketing with. So we're excited about it.
I'm most excited that we're only 3 years in, and I have to remind myself that many times. We're in the infancy of a brand new industry, first for college athletes, and now we're seeing it roll out more for high school athletes. And so what I think I'm most interested in is seeing many of the Fortune 500 brands that sort of sat on the sidelines the first 3 years, who now feel comfortable enough to dip their feet in the water. And I think we're going to see some amazing, amazing campaigns.
That's great. Well, that's a wrap for our panel. And thank you all so much for coming. Thank you, the audience. You were great.
Thank you.
Thank you.